Happy Sunday. Today is August 27th, 2023, and you know what that means, community. We've got another episode of Both Sides of the Conversation. And on behalf of our founder and visionary, Mr. Bishop John Henry, I am Mark Scott, the co host. And I am not by myself. I'm joined by my amazing co host, Miss Charisma Jones. Charisma, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Chilling on this Sunday, getting ready for the week and looking at all the kids going back to school. So,
Absolutely. And speaking of all the kids going back to school, that is going to be the topic. We're talking about going back to school and empowering our Black parents to be advocates for their children. So, we've got a lot of information, of course, to get out to your community. So, without any further ado, I'm going to jump into the headlines and we'll get started with the news. And our first headline reads: Authorities are investigating a deadly overnight Bay Area crashes. Two fatal crashes occurred overnight Sunday in the Bay Area. In the San Mateo County, one person died and two were injured in a crash on Interstate 280 in Redwood City. A black Volkswagen hit a concrete barrier, then stalled in the middle lane where it was struck by a white Honda CRV. The Volkswagen driver died at the scene while the two Honda occupants had minor injuries. In a separate incident, there was another deadly crash on Highway 101 in San Francisco near Silver Avenue. And prior to the crash, police received reports of a wrong way driver on Vermont Street. Details are limited, but it appears that there was a fatal collision near the 280 connection, causing traffic to come to a standstill on northbound 101. The causes of both crashes remain under investigation. And also in the headlines, gunman surrenders after standoff with San Francisco police. An hours long standoff occurred Sunday morning between police and an armed gunman who hid under an SUV in San Francisco's Soma neighborhood. Police first responded around 5:35 a.m. to Brannan Street between 7th and 8th Streets, where a man with a gun was spotted. The gunman fled while firing at least one shot before hiding under a parked vehicle nearby. San Francisco PD tactical and hostage negotiation teams were called in to speak with the gunman as paramedics stood by. And after several hours, the man finally surrendered without incident around 10:20 a.m. Streets in the area that had been blocked off were expected to reopen within an hour after the standoff ended. No injuries were reported from the incident. Also in the news, San Francisco corruption. Ex official gets 2.5 years in prison for clownish deceptions. Former San Francisco Building Inspection Commissioner Rodrigo Santos was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison on Friday for stealing over $1.5 million in checks from clients and bribing a city inspector. Santos admitted to taking checks meant for city fees from 2012 all the way up to 2019 and depositing them into his personal account. He also arranged for clients to make donations to a charity favored by Inspector Bernie Curran in exchange for favors. In total, Santos stole around $775,000 from 200 clients and another $720,000 from his business partner by depositing checks meant for his firm. He did not report the income to the IRS, and Santos has begun repaying victims over $300,000 so far. His supporters plead for leniency, calling the crimes out of character. However, prosecutors said that the extensive fraud showed Santos's true character. The judge agreed, handing down a 2.5 year sentence despite Santos' emotional plea for a second chance. Curran, who was previously sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison as well. And our final headline: U.S. military aircraft carrying more than 20 Marines crashes over Australia, killing three and injuring others. A U.S. Marine Corps MV 22B Osprey helicopter crashed during a military exercise in Australia's Northern Territory on Sunday morning, killing three Marines and injuring over 20 others. The crash occurred around 9:30 a.m. local time in Melville Island off the coast of Darwin, amid joint exercises between the U.S., Australia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Timor Leste. No Australians were involved in the accident, according to Australia's Defense Department, and multiple injured personnel were rescued and transported to the hospital, with 5 in serious condition. Recovery efforts are still underway, and the incident remains under investigation. And the crash resulted in a pause of the Predators Run exercises, which involved approximately 2,500 personnel total from the participating nations. The U.S. Department of Defense confirmed awareness of the crash, but could not provide further details. The cause of the accident remains unknown at this time. And that'll do it for the news. Charisma, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for the community events.
Hi, everybody. So this is the event that we have going on in the community. First, we want to support the San Francisco Unified School Closures Rally this Tuesday, August 29th from 5 to 6 p.m. San Francisco Unified School District Headquarters, 555 Franklin Street, San Francisco. Please sign the petition. The Order of Malta Clinic of Northern California is looking to hire a special nurse supervisor in Oakland. Please contact Ann Bursick. Help make memories. We are hiring at the Chase Center Job Fair on Thursday, August 31st, 2023, from 3:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., located at 1 Warriors Way, San Francisco, California. Looking for work? Join APRI. Their August info sessions with guest speakers from Smart Money Coaching on August 31st, 2023, at the APRI Learning Center, 1301 Evans Street, San Francisco, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. For more information, contact Deidre Smith. Join First Exposures for Year Photography. The free photography mentoring program is here for ages 11 to 18. Get ready for fun, friends, and a whole lot of photography. No experience needed. Just bring your passion and curiosity. The deadline for sign-up is September 1st, 2023. Apply today. Inspiring Young Emerging Leaders is seeking local high school students who qualify for free or reduced lunch for paid internship positions. Students will learn about environmental justice and social issues while getting paid. The deadline to apply is September 1st, 2023. Contact Amy Tam for more information. Friends of the Urban Forest presents Green Teens Fall 2023 for ages 16 to 19. Green your city and your resume by improving the city through tree care and sidewalk gardening. All training and equipment is provided. You must be a San Francisco Unified School District student or in a GED program. Deadline to apply is September 1st, 2023. Apply online. Mark your calendar and join APRI, Only Loud for the Small Business Market, event on Saturday, September 2nd, 2023 from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. at Indian Basin Shoreline Park, San Francisco. It will be a day of entrepreneurship, creativity, and community. Code Tenderloin's Job Readiness Program, September 5th, 2023 at 222 222 Street, San Francisco, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Orientation Friday, 9/1/2023 at 55 Taylor Street. Code Tenderloin's Free Coding Backup Bootcamp, September 6th through 25th, Monday through Thursday, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at 55 Taylor Street. Restorative Justice is hosting the 11th Annual Reentry Conference and Job Fair, Friday, September 8, 2023, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at St. Mary's Cathedral Event Center on 1111 Gulf Street, San Francisco. It's free admission, parking, and continental breakfast and lunch. Doors open at 7:45 a.m. We are welcoming all families and pregnant people to show up at the Pop-Up Village, second Saturdays in the Bayview, on September 9th, 2023, from 1 p.m. and 4:30. Engage in the self-care and get valuable resources and much more. Located between 1201 Mendel Street and Bayview Opera House, San Francisco. We're thrilled to announce that APRI and Swinterton are teaming up to bring you STEM at the Park event on Saturday, September 23rd, 2023, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Indian Basin Shoreline Park, San Francisco. This event is tailor-made for high school students who have a passion for exploring STEM careers in STEM fields. Don't miss out. New vaccination site, COVID-19, monkeypox antiviral pill treatment. Thursdays, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at 330 Ellis Street, as well as Saturdays, 12 to 4 p.m. at 1221 Mission Street. The San Francisco Justice Project presents the San Francisco Museums for All program. Justice for All program. Free or $3 admissions to low-income families in San Francisco all summer long. The Community Living Room, open all Monday through Friday, breakfast 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., and grab-and-go lunch from 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. at the City of Hope Cafe, 750 Ellis Street, San Francisco. Join the conversation at the YMCA Men's Harambe Cuts Shop Talk. Get a fresh haircut and end the night feeling and looking great. Thursday, October 12, 2023, 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at Bayview YMCA, 1601 Lane Street, San Francisco, for ages 14 and up, with complimentary refreshments and swag. National Shakeout Day on October 19th, 2023. Join in on the world's largest earthquake drill. Register to participate at shakeout.org. Save the date for San Francisco's Halloween candy explosion on October 28, 2023. Admission is free, and the event will include food, carnival games, music, and more. For more information, contact Star at the link below. Farmers Market, located at Southeast Community Center, 1550 Evans Avenue, San Francisco, every Thursday now through November 30th, 3 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. They accept cash, debit, and EBT. OMI Cultural Participation projects The Lion King, Friday, December 8th, 7:30 p.m. at the Orpheum Theater, 1192 Market Street, San Francisco. Wu Yi presents the Holiday Pajama Jam for Bottles and Blanket Pantry on Saturday, December 16th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at 4900 3rd Street, San Francisco. There are new nonprofit and donations are needed. OMI Cultural Participation presents The Wiz, Saturday, January 27, 2024, 7:30 p.m. at the Golden Gate Theater, 1 Taylor Street, San Francisco. San Francisco Human Rights Commission has a regular bi-monthly commission meetings on the second and fourth Thursday of each month at 5 p.m. in the San Francisco City Hall Room 416. You can also attend via Zoom. Be a mentor in San Francisco Unified School District. Join San Francisco Unified School District's school-based mentoring program, Mentoring for Success. Sign up to volunteer as an individual or group mentor, district-wide. Would you like to promote your business, nonprofit, or community impact? Sign up for our Hidden Gem Show. Share your expertise on Educational Thursdays or be a panelist on Sunday Conversations. Keep up with Both Sides of the Conversation's latest shows and community outreach events. Follow us on all social media platforms. You can also subscribe at our new newsletter at bothsidesoftheconversation.org. Both Sides of the Conversation welcomes individuals who are interested in giving back to the community as volunteers. We value the positive impact volunteers can make and invite you to be a part of our mission to uplift and support our community. Both Sides of the Conversation kindly request your invaluable support for our podcast and community engagement endeavors. We cordially invite you to explore any of our donation links, as your generous contributions will greatly aid us in enhancing our programming. We would like to take this time to acknowledge the Dreamkeeper initiative and support of VSOTC's programming. The Dreamkeeper initiative amplifies the voices and invests in San Francisco's diverse Black communities to reform public safety and address structural inequities in San Francisco. Visit dreamkeeperssf.org to learn more. And that's all for the events. Now we'll get on to our show.
All right. Yes, we do. You did a fantastic job. Thank you, Miss Charisma, for getting through all those events. I know it seems like that those events are a load. I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of information we get out, but community, I hope y'all understand how committed we are to making sure we get this information out. So thank y'all for bearing with us. And now we're gonna go ahead and get ready to jump into our topic. Of course, as you know, we have our hidden gems coming up on Tuesday night, and of course, educational Thursday on. But today, which is Sunday, we're going to be talking about going back to school and how we can empower Black parents as educational advocates. And again, we want every child to have advocates for their education, but our community does face some unique challenges. So let's talk about it. Now, the achievement gap between Black and white students continues to persist in the San Francisco schools. While advocates have made progress in recent years, Black parents still face barriers when trying to have their voices heard and get their children the educational resources they need. So, today we're going to discuss the unique challenges that Black parents face in a city like San Francisco and highlight the ways that we can increase their involvement and empowerment when it comes to their child's education. Now, we're going to hear about what's working and where more progress is still needed when it comes to equity in our classrooms. But above all, this conversation will focus on actionable steps Black parents can take today to better advocate for their children and make sure their needs are met by both teachers and school districts. And just a couple of stats, just so we can also frame it, because we got to talk about the numbers, because this conversation is one that affects us not just socially, but also spiritually, economically, and politically. So we have to give some real structure to the conversation. So in San Francisco right now, only 19% of Black students are proficient in math compared to 72% of white students. Also, Black students in San Francisco are 5 times more likely to be suspended than white students. And only 24% of teachers in San Francisco are Black compared to 7% of students who are Black. And in San Francisco Unified School District, Black students are more than twice as likely to be identified for special education services compared to the overall student population. And in 2018 to 2019 school year, 19% of Black students were enrolled in gifted and talented education through the GATE programs through the San Francisco Unified School District compared to 33% of white students. So it's quite obvious there are some disparities, but we don't just want to have this conversation in the vacuum. So we have the pleasure of being joined by some very esteemed guests. So if we can, with no further ado, I would like to introduce our guests. We have Miss Annette Roberts. Excuse me, Murray. Ms. Murray, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. And we also have another one of our guests, Ms. Tony Hines. Tony,
Hi,
how are
welcome,
you
ladies.
doing? Your mic is still muted, Tony. Okay, we'll work through. We'll get those taken, but we want to definitely
Like
welcome you.
this without the earpiece.
Okay, yeah,
Can you
there
hear me
you go.
now?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, we
All
ma'am.
right.
can hear you.
I'm just gonna. Okay, I took the earpiece off.
All right. Well, we're definitely glad to have you. And again, you heard the introduction. We went through the stats. Want to kind of open up the conversation. We do this popcorn style, but as far as how we can empower our community to be advocates, what are some of the issues that you see that are most pressing? And I guess, Miss Annette, we'll start with you, because we did have a conversation earlier before the show started. What are some of the critical issues? You mentioned attendance being one of the main things. I guess we can kind of start there. How can we empower our parents to improve the attendance?
I think we need to really communicate with parents and let them know how important attendance plays in their children's education, because when kids don't show up for school, we end up seeing children with gaps in their learning. And over the years, those gaps get wider and wider. And that's why I was telling you, we have kids sitting in fourth and fifth grade that are reading on a first and second grade level, They're struggling to do the math at the higher grade levels because then we start introducing the word problems, which requires reading. And our kids, they can't read. They don't understand the language, the vocabulary that's being presented to them. And so when kids are not in school, it just widens the gap. And as we talked about before with COVID, our kids lost a lot of learning. They fell behind. The virtual learning was not conducive for their learning. A lot of them could not sit still, for that long period of time to learn online. And so we saw a lot of regression when kids came back to school. And as I told you before, a lot of kids fell through the cracks because we lost a lot of kids. A lot of kids did not return back to school when the schools reopened, and we saw our numbers decrease. And so we're still trying to find out what happened to some of the kids that never returned from COVID. And I think that's why you're starting to see numbers in public schools that are dipping, that are dropping. A lot of those kids went into homeschool situations. Some of them were pulled out and were just kept at home. Some of them were moved into charters, but the numbers definitely dropped. And so, the thing I would communicate to parents, the foundation of working with your child to teach your child at an early age, exposing them to books, to literature, reading to them, and then having them read to you when they're able to do that, but also making sure that your child is at school every day. You teach them work ethic. You have to go to work. You can't just stay home. And I do understand that, parents are struggling sometimes with situations where they don't have babysitters or, there's other variables that come into play. But as an administrator, when I look at the data and I see, these children who are struggling and are 2 and 3 grade levels behind, and I pull their CUME folder and I look, a lot of times there's an attendance issue over the years where they've been absent or they're on SARB contracts. And, that's not the only thing, but that's a major thing.
It makes me think about also when the kids are at home, and they have situations going at home, because not all, environments and, that are that some of these children have are safe environments. It makes me concerned about what's going on at the home, because the school, when the kids come to school, there's another set of eyes. There's sets of eyes, looking at these kids. Like, are they eating enough? Are they mentally okay? Are they physically okay? Like, there's a lot of different people looking at them and just checking on their well-being when they're at school. But if they're not at school, nobody's able to do that. So that makes me concerned about that too.
Right. And I'll tell you, Charisma, during COVID, that was a major challenge that we had in the school system. You had kids that were at home that we weren't able to put our eyes on, who were not eating, who were being verbally or physically abused, who were being left at home alone because, I understand parents have to work and some of them did not have any childcare set up, but they still had to go to work. You had essential workers who still had to report to work during COVID, and a lot of parents didn't have childcare. And so you had some kids who were young who were being left at home alone, and the situation just exacerbated. So when the schools reopened, what I noticed is that our reports for CPS went up. We had kids telling us stories about how they weren't eating and how they were being verbally and physically abused. And so the reports for CPS went up when kids came back to school. So when you can't put your eyes on kids and you're not having the conversation with them about what's going on, are you okay, and you don't have your finger on the pulse and you're not checking the temperature, then things kind of go awry and you can't intervene. And so kids came back with the stories, and I'll tell you, kids are very honest. They'll tell you, oh, my parents were fighting last night, or this came out, and you'd be surprised what they tell their teachers. And as mandated reporters, we have to report to CPS when we hear those things. And so the calls and the reports went up to CPS. They increased after kids came back from COVID because of the things that we were hearing from our students. And so, you know, that's another challenge. And it's like you said, if a kid is not in a safe environment at home, if their basic needs are not being met, they don't have food, they don't have shelter, there's abuse in the home, you can't even get to the learning part of it because you've got to meet the basic needs first. I got to feed kids who are coming to school late because they haven't eaten since the day before. I can't send them to class and expect for them to learn when we know the brain cannot function properly and unless it's being fed. So we're having to feed those kids, and those kids are going to class late because we're having to make sure that they eat. Now, some of the kids are already coming late and they haven't eaten since the day before. So stop right there. Let me feed you before I send you to class and expect for you to perform for me on an empty stomach.
Yeah, it also makes me think about too, like when the kids come to school and they have the writing stations. They tell the teachers, or they write down what they did on the weekend. They draw pictures, things like that. Like all the little nuances of them coming to school, just that little aspect in itself can help ensure safety, because even though they might not verbally say what's going on in the home, if they draw a picture or if they write a summary about what happened when they're at home, that's another way that you could help, advocate and, keep them safe, because that's another set of eyes. That's another way that they're communicating with you. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, no, you're fine. And I wanted to ask Ms. Hines, what are some of the unique challenges that you think Black parents are facing trying to advocate for their children from your experience?
I think number one for me is the parents do not know their rights. So when you don't know your rights, the school system may take them from you. And I'll give an example. Let's say your child has a fight or something goes down at the school. I have found that sometimes the school system does just like the justice system does, and will pile on a lot of charges. If you do not know the education code and your rights, they may even expel your child without giving them due process. So I find that's a problem. Like they talk about a lot about what you all were talking about, not being there, but sometimes they've been pushed out. It's a lot of kids who have been pushed out of the school, sometimes just because they're bored. And I really appreciate the fact of you all talking about the safety. So I'm not talking about the safety aspect of it as far as the schools, because there are some teachers and people that really help keep students safe, but there also are some harm doing in the schools. I know several adults, and jokingly, John almost ends the show all the time talking about how he was, didn't learn at SFUSD. So I'm talking about some of those things that are actually true. When our students go to school, they're not necessarily learning. Sometimes they're in the hallway. Sometimes they're just going to school just for the social aspect, which is important, but I want my child to learn. And also I want them to know and be prepared for career or college. So if you don't even know about I'm talking about parents and community, about the A through G requirements, which is the school's job to actually tell you that. If you're not an education advocate yourself, they should tell you your child needs this really from third grade on. Kindergarten through third grade, you're learning your foundation. After that, I really feel like you should be getting prepared for college or career. That's how I did my children. I taught them skills more so than what they got at school. For me, school was a babysitter. And sometimes I got in trouble because my children were smart. So then they were idle. So it's a balance. But I really think when you don't know your rights, you do need an advocate, or you have to become an advocate. And I had 3 Black boys. 2 of them dark skinned that stayed in trouble. My lighter skinned son didn't get in as much trouble unless, he really put himself on the radar. But especially my baby boy, they were just always messing with him. He was spoiled, let me add that, but he was smart. And some teachers can't handle smart kids. So I had the opposite problem. My kids was in school. And you know what, you all? I took him out for 6 months until I was able to get him into a private school, because I didn't want him to go to the school where they were mistreating him. there was abuse going on. The teacher threw water on his head. Edison Elementary charter, I'm talking about John, and I had to call the police. And she did it because I guess she didn't think he had a functioning parent that was going to call the police on her. So there is abuse actually going on in the schools too. And sometimes our children tell us and sometimes they don't. So I would like to see parents and community have more forums. Thank you for putting up that APG requirements. Have a forum where we tell our community what we need. Because there's simple things, there's hard things, but together we've educated ourselves since 1619 and before in this country.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. And I do want to get your perspective, because we do have to find the right balance between parental cultural standards, like what do we as a family unit instill as far as the importance of education and its necessity for being able to function in our society, with understanding that there are always going to be limitations by a system that is essentially the same as it was 120 years ago when it was implemented, and it hasn't really evolved much, but still trying to get the most value out of it as a community, even though we know it wasn't really intended to make people well-rounded thinkers. They wanted to create workers, but we have to use it. It's what's here. We face consequences if we don't participate. And then we have people who are in the system trying to advocate, trying to do their part from within. So how do we bridge the gap between the system being what the system is and us being involved in it, and how we can extract the most out of it? And I wanted to open that up to you, Ms. Murray.
Okay, so the first thing I can tell you, the stories that you brought forth, kind of shocking to me as a school principal. One thing that I would encourage parents to do is to meet their child's teacher, get to know what the requirements are for their children, stay in contact with your child's teacher. I know they have platforms such as Class Dojo, where you can send the child's teacher a message and the teacher will message you right back. And when you're not getting what you need from the teacher, that should be an immediate way for you to go and contact the principal, because everybody has a boss. If you're not getting what you need from someone, then you want to go and you want to talk to their boss. But there needs to be a constant contact of parents with teachers. You need to always be advocating for your child. As an administrator, I have come across teachers who, weren't the best teachers. Come across teachers who did not always treat kids with respect that they should have treated them with. But I had those courageous conversations with teachers, because that didn't happen under my watch, because I remembered why I got into the arena. Sometimes we forget why we got into the arena and we get caught up in the task of getting the job done. But you have to remember why you got into the arena. Is the system fair? No, it's not. Do we have more African-American students who are being pushed into special education? Yes, we do. What is my take on that? I think that sometimes when we don't have teachers who look like our kids, it is hard for them to relate to how our kids learn. It is hard for them to understand our children's behavior. I was African-American teacher, and I rarely sent any Black kids to the office because I knew how to communicate with them on their level. I knew how to speak to them and how to respect them, but I also knew how to challenge them. And that's the other thing that I see sometimes with teachers is, they know how to teach right down the middle. They know how to teach, the smart kids to a certain extent, but they more so focus on the kids that are struggling. But what about you challenging those kids that are gate kids, or those kids that are already at that level? See, because they don't always come in contact with a lot of the smart kids. And so they haven't perfected their craft in that area. And so you have to have something ready for when the smart kid comes in your class, that they don't get bored, because what boredom turns into is misbehaving. When you don't keep a child engaged, you open up the door for them to check out and for them to start misbehaving. And so you've got to have a lot of things in your bag as a teacher to meet the different diverse needs of the students in your class. You can't come with a one size fits all, because it's not, your student population is not made up of a one size fits all. And I tell teachers all the time, you need to learn about the different cultural backgrounds that your students come from, because how you teach your white students is not how your Black students learn, not how your Chinese students and your Indian students learn. We come from different backgrounds with different beliefs, and we have to teach according to that. And so that's what I mean when I say you come with your bag with all your tools in it. If you don't educate yourself and you don't know about that, then you'll tend to do the same thing over and over again, and our kids never get what they need. But as far as our Black parents, I encourage parents to be a part of what's going on with their child. Don't just assume that the teacher is going to take care of it. You know, I was teaching when my children were in school, and so I was always there. If I got that call, I'm coming straight up there. I got to go get somebody to cover my class. And I've had situations, because I have 2 Black boys, where, you know, my children were mistreated. But I had the conversation with the principal behind closed doors that my kids are not the one. See, because I know the system. I work in the system. You will not talk to my kids in a disrespectful manner. You will not embarrass my sons in front of, and this happened in high school, where a teacher basically embarrassed my son because he didn't have his homework. He had forgotten his homework, and she asked him, well, is there something wrong? Why can't you keep up with your homework? And when the conversation went behind closed doors, I told her, I said, I'm the mother. You have a problem with my child, you bring it to me, but you don't humiliate my child in front of the whole classroom. Because when we start damaging kids' self-esteem, then we start having kids that shrink back and not showing us what they could do out of fear that somebody is going to criticize them and somebody is going to put them on blast. And so they don't show you what they know. And especially with our Black men, that is not how we interact with our Black men. When we continuously attack and make them feel less, then you start seeing behavior where, you know, they're not going to show you what they know. They're going to misbehave to get attention from the rest of the classmates. And so I'm saying, for parents, you have to talk to your children. See, how did your day go today? Is everything going on okay with you? Are you having any problems with any of your teachers? And if your child is telling you, hey, I got a teacher who, Mom, she gives me a hard time, or this, it's time for you to show up at the school and find out what's going on and be proactive instead of being reactive. You don't let the situation get out of control. You nip it in the bud right away, and you follow your kid's progress. If there's an issue that the teacher is telling you your child isn't turning in his homework, then you need to be on top of that, because it's not a one-way street. It takes 2, the school and the home, in order to make the child successful. And so I'm saying, as we say, okay, we want the school to do their part. Yes, they need to do their part, but we also need parents to step up and value education and say, I'm going to do my part. And I'm not saying that parents aren't doing that, but we have a few that don't. And so we've got to work collaboratively together in order to move kids forward. It's not me against you. It's not parents against the school. It's how can we do this together to make our kids successful?
So I agree with everything you said. I also like to add, some children do not have functioning parents in the house. Some children
Yes.
come from such hard, traumatic places that we still have to support them.
Yes.
Like my mother, she was
Yes.
like this, and I was like this. I didn't choose my children's friends. I supported them. If they had a child that had an issue, it was one young man came to my house. He would come during spring break, and his mom would come get him. And then one time she didn't. And I did have to get the sister involved after a while. But I had one of those open houses where I had a big pot of something for anybody to eat. Because I always realized, where I grew up down south, and I grew up in a community where people looked after me. So I brought that sentiment here. So I didn't care. Like, whatever you're going through, my house is a safe place to land. I want to know your parents. I knew most of the parents. And then when I found out some people just did not have parents, I was kind of shocked. So I grew up, not only was it parents, it was two parents. I was real naive when I moved to San Francisco, because I moved to San Francisco before where I live, crack had hit. And I moved here in the early 90s, crack had came through. So I had some culture shock. Like, where are the parents? And then I found out where some of the parents were. And then there's other things in our community, and it's not to make excuses. I was looking at the Jonestown, from example, from a distance. And then I moved here. I literally know families where that was part of their family and the trauma wasn't addressed. So it's been passed down 2 and 3 generations. So we've had crack, we've had Jonestown. Now, I'm not saying woe is us. Please tell me that we are survivors. We work together. But I'm also saying I can't expect a certain family type to be able to navigate what they don't know. I'm into the grassroots. I like it when the community puts the arm around all the children. And let me add this. My children they weren't Latchkey Kids, but it was a program when I moved here called Latchkey. It was at Joseph Lee Gym. And my kids wanted to go. I'm like, no, you're not, because I didn't like the word. I got to meet the people there. Not only did they go, I would go. Talk about parent involvement. I was up in there too, drawing and doing different things. Cause I was like, oh, I didn't like the name, but I did love it. And to this day, some of those people are my friends and my children's friends, because it wasn't about the name, it was about what they did. They created an environment. Gilman Park, Boys and Girls Club. We got to get our community-based organizations a lot of love, because when our kids come from homes that need more support, there's community that supports them. So my problem was I was from the country and I was naive, kind of. I moved here like, okay, what is really going on? And people helped pull me up and pull me through. So that's what we got to do, because again, every child does not have that 2-parent home, that like you said earlier, food in the pot, it's things that are lacking. And I can't just worry about just my children. I have to worry about the whole community. Because I used to even tell my kids, like, say my kids were having a fight with somebody, don't let it be a boy and a girl. I'm talking about elementary. I say, one day that might be your wife, so you better make sure she's good. So I would just play those type of games. Like, we are a community. And I do that with my grandkids too. I talk about, mindfulness and all kinds of healing tools, so they could have that ripple through, because we all need it. We all need help from somebody. So that's what I preach. Each one, reach one.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot of
I
times
think from what I'm seeing here, go ahead.
I was gonna say, sometimes I'm a little concerned about that too, because I live on the peninsula, but I live in like the San Mateo area, and at my daughter's daycare right now, she's the only little Black girl in there, and all the surrounding areas, the surrounding schools, there's no little Black kids, and sometimes I wonder, how will she be affected by her being the Black kid at the school? Will they treat her mean? Will they be mean to her? Will they play with her? Like, how will she be affected by this? And those are some of the things I think about every day as she's getting older, because she hasn't gone to kindergarten yet. She's still in preschool, like daycare stage. But I think about that. That's why it's important for me to talk to her every day, ask her how her day went. And I mentioned on the previous show before, like last week, she tells me all about her day, every little detail. But it's important that I connect with her every day after school when I pick her up. Ask her how her day was. What does she do? Who does she play with? What does she eat? Like, she tells me everything. So I'm going to, get the firsthand experience with that. But those are some of the concerns I have is her being the only little Black kid.
I'm gonna jump in real quick
I've
on
had
that.
this conversation.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I've had this
Real
conversation
quick
with John
story. Go
before.
ahead.
We've talked about this. I grew up in inner city Detroit. And so for me, I had Black teachers. Almost all of my teachers were Black. I could tell you I maybe had 1 or 2 white teachers because I grew up in the inner city. And so when you have teachers who look like you, who pour into you, and our teachers didn't play back then. I grew up in the era where we got paddled. If you went to the principal's office and you got in trouble, you were going to get paddled. And the paddles had the holes in them where the air go through, and you had to assume the position and they would just paddle you. That's just the way it was. And so it taught us a lot, but we also had a community of teachers who were pouring into us and letting us know that they had high expectations for us. A lot of us went on and went to college. We went to the HBCUs, you know, we went to the Black colleges. I had friends that were down at Meharry who became doctors, friends who went to Spelman. And, you know, we got poured into so much that we knew that the only option for us were either we were going to go to college or go to the military. But we couldn't stay home because that's what we were told. You got to make a choice. You're going to go to college or you're going to go to the military. And we had teachers in behind us, pushing us, telling us we can do it, we can do it. That's why it's so important for Black kids to have teachers who look like them so that they can see not only can I achieve, but you're getting the Black perspective of teachers who telling you that you can achieve and you're going to have to get out there and do it. And so, you know, I look back at most of the people that I went to high school with, and a lot of them are very successful now, even though we grew up in the ghetto of inner city Detroit. You would think, what's going to happen to kids that are coming out of that? And so when you look at kids in Oakland and San Francisco that are coming out of those hard places, if they don't have teachers that are pouring into them and pushing them and say, you got this, and a lot of times they don't. They have teachers who can't relate to them, teachers who don't understand them. And I've told districts that I've worked for over and over again, why don't you have any Black teachers that represent the population? Oh, we can't hire Black teachers. No, you're not going down south. You're not recruiting in the places where there's educated Black people. There's a lot down at our Black colleges that we could be pulling from if you would be willing to go down there and offer them the bonuses that you're offering now. Now they got $7,000 and $10,000 sign-on bonuses for teachers because they can't get anybody. You know, it's all of these incentives out here, but you waited until things got so bad that now you need teachers so bad that you can't even hardly get one in the classroom. Nobody wants to go in the profession because you don't pay enough. And so I'm telling parents, you need to make sure that when you send your kids to school, you better make sure that it's a Black teacher somewhere in there. And not all Black teachers are good, but I'm going to tell you something. It's something about a Black child seeing somebody who looks like them that inspires them. It inspires them. I've seen it every day, and I knew when I came out of school, I said, I know I'm going to do something with my life because Miss Brown, Miss Thompson, Miss Taylor, all of them was constantly telling me, you're going to do something with your, there was no other option.
Oh God.
I want to say two things. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead, Tony. What you got? What you got?
One about charisma, because that just warmed my heart. So charisma, my daughter, K through 12, she was taking Mandarin. Well, K through 10, she took Mandarin, and then she quit taking it. So all of her, especially the girls in her class, were white or Chinese and one Latina. And she had 2 Black girls that was in the program, but they left. So it's largely, she was the only Black girl through that time. She ended up going to a HBCU to kind of find out some things that she wanted to figure out.
Yes.
That baby this year went to LSU. She did 2 years at a HBCU. So I'm saying about your daughter, like, I'm very Afrocentric. I wear African stuff more than Africans do. Like, I'm very that. So at home, she saw it. I kind of overdid it. But I just wanted to make sure she had the sense of being a Black woman, and not like me, but like herself, because there's more than one way to be Black. But I still want her to know about our history and the culture. And I didn't want her to think that our culture began with enslavement or whatever she may have learned. So you just make sure she sees some positive Black folk, and that she understands she doesn't have to be a certain Black way, and that there are opportunities. Like, I put my daughter on the Brown Bombers when she was 6 through, I think, 12 or 13. So she'd have an opportunity to be around our community. So she would find her way. And that's why my baby went to the HBCU, so she could be around Black folks. She got 2 years and she was good. But yeah, just make sure your baby has the opportunity. And it's okay if she's, a little different, but make sure, and what I mean by different, that she's not, right in it all day, every day, that she's the only Black girl, but that she stays attuned and learns about herself. Like, don't let them, Lord, I was in the car today and somebody said good hair. I lost my mind, but that's a whole nother issue. So that she understand Black is okay. Black is great. Black is awesome. So that's what I just wanted to say about that, because I love it. Like, just keep your baby attuned and she'll be okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate that, because some of the stuff that she come home and tell me, I'm like, who said that to you? Because she said one of the kids, somebody said, don't go out in the sun. Your skin is gonna turn black. I don't know who said that to her, and I was trying to figure out who said that. But I always tell her that her skin is beautiful, and she has brown skin like mommy, and her skin is beautiful. Her hair is beautiful, and I always tell her that she's pretty every day, and I reinforce that. But I do recognize that, there might be outside influences and things like that. I still don't know to this day who said that to her, but that's very disturbing to me, of course, to hear that.
And that's something, that's something that, our African American kids deal with a lot of that at school. And I mean, you talked about earlier, what are we doing for the social emotional piece that our kids are struggling with? We have counselors in the schools, not as many as we would like to have, but after COVID, when we got all the money from the federal government, one of the things that a lot of school districts did is they brought in more counselors, because they realized that kids were struggling socially and emotionally, and COVID only heightened that. You had kids that were depressed, that were having anxiety. They were already struggling with their self-esteem before COVID happened. And then COVID came and they got isolated, and then they began to struggle on a deeper level. Some things were going on in their homes, which also added to, their stress and their anxiety. So I had third and fourth grade girls who were coming to my office crying because they couldn't cope. And so, we had to have them start seeing the counselor. It got to the point where the counselors were so overloaded with their caseloads that we needed to, we asked the district to send us another counselor. But I think we sometimes take for granted that our kids are okay. And we think just because as adults that we might be coping, even though we're struggling, that our kids are okay. If it's difficult for you to deal with as an adult, then how do you think your kid is getting along? And then you got on top of that, you might have, I had maybe about 25 African-American kids at my school out of, 500 kids, because I was in a high socioeconomic area. And so you have that whole thing that you're talking about, Charisma, where you've got kids on the playground that are making inappropriate comments to our African-American kids, or saying, why is your hair like that? Why is your skin so dark? Because they haven't been taught that those things are inappropriate. And so trying to deal with that piece of it with our African-American kids, and it's a struggle for them to try to fit in. And at some point, some of them try to suppress who they are just so that they can fit in with the status quo. And that's a hard thing right there. So you really have to monitor as a Black parent when you have your child in a situation where there's very few African-American kids, because there comes some struggles if their self-esteem isn't where it should be, and you're not building them up at home every day to, hey, love who you are. You're Black, you're beautiful. And you send them to school. It's a jungle out there on that playground. It's a vicious place for a child to be. The worst place where kids' self-esteem gets damaged is on the playground. That's the place right there where it happens, because you have so many kids coming at them at one time, and you don't know how these other kids are being raised. And I'm going to tell you, some of them come from racist homes where they have no problem going up to your kids saying those things that you were talking about earlier. And then the kid comes to the office crying at the point where they can't take it anymore, but it's been going on for a long time. It didn't just happen. It's been going on for months and months.
You know what I realized too is that it doesn't just stop, in the grade school, because literally the other day I'm at my job and I'm talking to my coworkers, and one of my coworkers was talking about one of the candidates that had came in to interview for the position, and he said to him, "Yeah, he came in. Uh, what other candidate that came in? He's like another Asian guy, and the guy I was talking about it was also an Asian guy." And he was saying like, yeah, he came in, he had like Crocs and sweats on for an interview, and he was so dark. The guy was really dark, and I was just looking like, did he really just like say that? Like, does he not see that I'm in the vicinity? I'm a black person. I'm very dark skinned compared to all the rest of them. I mean, he just said it so casually too. Like, it's nothing wrong with being dark. Nothing wrong with being dark skinned. There's nothing wrong with that. But they're conditioned to where it's like looked at as being being something bad, and it's not just in the black community. It's across all the communities, and it doesn't just stop in the grade schools. It carries out through the corporate world as well.
Charisma, I'm a
When
steward
you
of one
don't
of those
check that
little free
behavior,
libraries, and I have a lot of books like about I love my hair, I love my skin, different things. So please contact me. I have at least 3 to 4, 5 books, and that's one thing the African American Parent Advisory Council do. We help families build libraries. So please contact me after this. I have books for you and your baby.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would
You're
really
yeah.
welcome.
appreciate that. My daughter loves books.
Yeah, I'd like to see, more African American parents, and this is what I used to do. We would have career day, and I would invite, African American parents, come on out, talk about the career that you have with our kids. We had firefighters. Some of our Black parents were engineers. Whatever it is that you do, let our kids see that this is a profession that they can also go into. This is something that they can be successful at. So when we talk about parent involvement, there's a lot of different ways that parents can get involved and be a part of the school system. There's a lot of ways that they can have their voices heard. We have school site council, we have parent advisory meetings. So there's a lot of ways that parents can come out when we're choosing curriculum. They can come to the district and have their voices heard about what types of curriculum. There's a lot of books being banned right now. And a lot of those books have to do with slavery and, how it's making white children feel uncomfortable. So a lot of white parents don't want their kids to read about things like that. And so we need to have our Black parents come out and give their perspective that this is something that's important. It's a part of history. It needs to be learned about. We learned about it. So how are you going to cut it off right now? And so it's a lot of ways that we can have our African American parents get involved.
And I'm glad you brought that point up, because I think this is one of the challenges that we have to really separate ourselves from the illusion of what the American education system promises and the reality of what we're actually getting. Because again, for over 100 years now, the educational system has not evolved. The same institutional challenges and priorities that it had when it started are still affecting our children adversely. And as parents, as community, how do we balance what we expect from the school realistically, and then what we have to do ourselves within our own homes? Because when I step back, I look at other cultures that face discrimination, but their cultural approach is they do a lot of teaching and educating at home, or they do it through their religious cultural institutions, and we seem to not have that type of consistency. So from your point of view, being on the inside of the system and seeing what needs to take place, are there any things, resources available that maybe we're just not aware of, or is it that we're just going to have to own our own healing process and just take it upon ourselves to do it and not expect the school system to deliver on their promise?
I think that part of it is you cannot expect the school system to deliver on their promise. The squeaky wheel is the one that gets heard. You have to be out there advocating for your children, demanding that certain things be taken care of. There are social justice organizations that will step in on your behalf and go to the school. And I know of some down here in the Valley that have gone on behalf of some parents and had meetings with principals and district leaders because things were not getting taken care of. There's all kind of advocacy groups that will speak on your behalf when you feel like you're not, your voice is not being heard. But continuously knocking on that door and making your voice heard, at some point somebody's going to have to move, and you take that thing all the way up to the board of education and up to the state, if you have to, all the way to Thurman. And so you want to make sure that you're constantly keeping it in the forefront, because you going to one person and saying, oh, I went to the teacher and nothing happened. Well, did you talk to the principal? Well, no, I didn't talk to. Well, why didn't you go to the principal? Everybody has a boss. Everybody's check is being signed by somebody higher. And if you're not getting your needs met at the lower level, you got to take it to the higher level. When people see that you have, the wherewithal, that you're willing to go to the next level, they start to treat you a little bit different. And I tell people all the time, if you can't get the job done, then give me your supervisor's name and phone number. And sometimes that shaking of the tree right there gets people to make a U-turn. Other times it doesn't, and I make sure I go to the next level, and I'll keep going up the chain until I get what I want. That's part of the process. This is how our Caucasian parents operate. When I look at the difference between Black parents and white parents come up to the school like they're entitled. You better give me what I want, and if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to the board. I can't tell you how many times I've had parents go to the district on me, even when I was following, and most of the time I was following district protocol, but they did not like it. And I told them, I said, well, this is district protocol. Well, I don't want to hear it. I'm going to the board. Okay, you have the right to go to the board. You go to the board. And so they come in with that, you're going to give me what I want type of attitude. And this is why you see a lot of white kids get what their parents want them to have, because their parents are strong advocates for them. They come in demanding. A lot of times our Black parents don't come in demanding. My kid is failing. They'll look at the test scores and they are like, okay, well, I guess I just got to accept it. No, what kind of tutoring programs are available? What can you do to help my child get to the next level? And I'm going to monitor this all the way. I want to see the test scores for the teachers for the next grade to see whose kids are performing the highest. All of that stuff is on the internet. You can pull the report card for the school and you can see which teachers have the highest test scores. Then you go back to the principal and say, I see Miss Johnson in the 6th grade. Her kids do well year after year. I want my kid in Miss Johnson's class next year. You put in the request. But unless you do your homework, how will you ever know that? And they might be sticking your kid with the crappiest teacher every year, and your kid ain't being taught nothing. These things are public information. When you go online, you can pull all of this data about the school. And I tell parents this too. They tell me all the time, well, my kid, the school is not performing where it should be, and the school could be on school improvement. Do you know that you have the right to request a transfer, to have your child transferred to another school if that school is underperforming and they got to pay for busing? Do you know that you have the right for that? And so because we don't educate ourselves, our kids end up suffering. And so I always tell parents when they come to me and say, hey, my kid isn't doing well. What's the name of the school that your kid is at? I go online, I pull the school's report card. Well, that school isn't really good anyway. They've been on school and all their test scores is low. What you need to do is find another school for your child and tell them that you want the transfer and they got to pay for the busing, because they've been underperforming for years. But see, because they don't know that, They don't understand that they have the right to do those things. That's why education is so powerful. How you help your child? Educate yourself. Know how to navigate the system. Know what you can and what you cannot do.
That's really powerful. One thing about educating yourself and advocating, I didn't even never think to go to Thurman because our San Francisco school board last year was openly racist towards African Americans. They literally had a person that said African American parents don't care about their children's education, among other things. So it's a little different up here. When I moved from down south, and a big racist, blah blah blah, the overt kind. And I moved to San Francisco. It's way more polite, but it was still the same. The black and brown kids in the unperforming schools with teachers who didn't have the experience. The other side of town had the teachers with experience. They had better conditions. So I totally agree with everything you're saying. So thank you for that. I'm gonna talk to the group that I advocate with that we need to start going to the state because this school board has proven that
That's right.
Educating African American children isn't necessarily their priority. And I understand, sometimes our babies are a little more active, but I had went to a workshop once. I was in the wrong place at the right time. And they were talking to teachers about the things they like about Black kids and the things they didn't. And it was largely white teachers, a few Chinese. And it was so funny. They really liked that our children were vocal. They really hated that our children were vocal. So it was just such a mixed bag. Like the things you like about them is the things you don't like about them. So I found that very interesting also.
But you
Yeah,
also have to know the culture. In the white culture, they teach their kids to be a little bit more submissive. Our kids are more aggressive, they're more active, and a lot of them don't know how to deal with that. I remember teaching, and I would have my African American boys out there seated, and I'd be like, "Boy, you better get on over there and sit down." And didn't think anything of it. And guess what? They went on over there and sat down, and I carried on with my lesson. But unless you know about the culture, you don't know how to really interact with those kids. You want to label it as bad behavior when it's not bad behavior. It's just that they're hyperactive sometimes.
I've noticed that, like, I took an anthropology class in college, and in one of the videos that I was watching, it was an old video, and it showed that I think it was some Chinese students were being all taught how to do, how to just go throughout their school day the same exact way. Like they have like a lot of uniformity. They don't want any of the children to be different.
Yep.
They want them to do the exact same way, write the exact same. Everything's supposed to be the same. And so, so it's a lot of cultural differences between the way that some of the other children might be learning versus our children. So I definitely can agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think understanding
definitely.
the nature
Go
of
ahead.
our educational system. Again, our educational system was set up and regimented the way it was for a particular reason, and it was the Prussian model that they got it off of. And there was a quote by one of the great thinkers who kind of organized. I believe it was the German philosophy where the Prussian school system model came from, and they was like, look, if we go in and take over a community or area, we know the adults that they have their beliefs and their traditions. So we're going to make sure we can start with the children. So that's why they start setting up these schools and making it compensatory that, hey, your children have to go to these schools so they can learn how to function under the system that they're in. And because this model is the same thing,
Right.
our children are struggling because, again, the lack of representation, the lack of cultural empathy. And at the end of the day, because it's commoditized, and as we know in America, everything is about the dollar. I think for us as a community, the first aspect that we really have to address is going to be the economics. Because again, if the system doesn't get bodies in chairs, they don't get funding. They want their money. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if we're going to give ourselves proper representation, we have to be willing to invest into making sure the teachers that represent us and that are empathetic to our children can have the time and resources to pour into them and teach them. We have to create our own
Yep.
support system because it's quite obvious the system doesn't make us a priority.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And I'm going to tell you that that's the core of it. They need to start recruiting more teachers that are diverse, that look like our children, because of the understanding of how to deal with kids is a cultural thing. Teachers come into the classroom with a bag of beliefs. Those beliefs come from how they were raised, what they were taught. Some of them were taught that African Americans are, need to be suppressed because they are wild, they are out of control. And so you have some white teachers that automatically come in thinking that I have to suppress my black boys or my black girls because they have a perception of what they were taught in their home, that this is what a black person is like. They haven't educated themselves culturally on the culture, and so they're coming in with their beliefs. Same thing for Chinese students. Okay, these were our highest performing students. But when they come it's so regimented, and people don't tend to come at them from a social emotional perspective, because it's sort of like their personalities are mechanical. And so, we haven't got to that point because we haven't studied the culture enough. How do we deal with our Asian children? They have social emotional issues just like everybody else. But teachers sometimes naturally assume perform, because that's what they've always done. And so they never tap into the social emotional part. And and I've watched a lot of our Asian kids fall apart when they can't meet the mark because they don't know. That nobody has taught them to tap into their social emotional and how do I deal with failure? They don't know. And so these are a lot of things that need to be addressed. We really need to talk to our universities about making sure that teachers take some type of cultural class as part of their credentialing process, that they get to learn about different cultures, because they're not coming to the schools prepared to do that. They're coming with their own thought process, which oftentimes is totally off. They're coming with, oh, these kids are rambunctious. Let me make them sit down. And all it's doing is exacerbating the problem with our black kids. You're trying to suppress them. They need to be able to express themselves. That's how they learn.
I remember I
So
was
that's a huge
volunteering.
problem.
Yeah. I was volunteering at a school, and one of the punishments was you had to sit on the bench in recess. Oh, Lord, I changed that culture. I was like, if you want them to have a better afternoon, you might want to, they didn't do this part, give them an extra recess, but they definitely let them keep that recess because it didn't even make sense. If somebody's shifting and moving around, doing all this, doing math, let them run around that playground. Matter of fact, have a little break earlier. So, yes, just understanding even child development. Sometimes our children are just ahead. It's not that they hyper, they just come out sometimes with a natural head start. They have that verb. They like, I'm moving around now. I was talking to a young man yesterday because the African American Parent Advisory Council in Ali, they had a welcome back to school for the families with black children. And one little boy was just doing something like that. And I noticed I was doing it too. I was like, look, I said, I still do that. Y'all, I am 60 years old. I still have verbs. I don't move as quick as I used to, but I move around because I'm always in action. I'm always thinking, and my mind actually has rhythm. So I learned with rhythm. Now, being a military brat and a daddy that was in the military, I also learned how to sit my butt in the seat with that belt. I learned
Yeah.
how to sit down.
Yeah.
But I also know that I learn better moving. I talk, I move. I'm just always moving and I'm always thinking. So we also have to realize that just because they're moving don't mean they're not learning. Maybe they need to tap to learn how to do math. You have to be creative with our babies. And when you help our babies, you help other students that have those issues also, instead of trying to suppress them. And I'm glad you mentioned the Chinese. My daughter that went through the K through 10 in the Mandarin immersion, very reserved, very memorable, very
Yep.
all that stuff, right? So she's acceptable anywhere she go. I have a grandson who used to hang out with us too. People, and he move around just like I'm a Gemini, he's a Gemini. So she's sitting more still than I do. So I'm saying, sometimes we just need to move. And there's a time and place for sitting down, just like in church. I have family from
Yep.
Texas, and I used to remember sitting at the table with them versus them with their kids and me with mine. They would sit their children down, sit them up straight, do all that stuff. Me and my kids then prayed and started eating already. So I was like, yeah, it's a different culture. This is the same family, but they're in Texas. I was raised other places, and I just didn't make my kids sit still to that level. So it's just a work in progress, and everybody's different, but we can learn from each other.
Yes,
Absolutely, and
yes.
that's what I
And
kind of
so,
wanted to get. Well, go ahead, Miss Murray, because I just wanted to ask about some of the success
no,
stories,
no,
because
no, go
I
ahead.
don't want this to all be doom and gloom, but I know there are a lot of success stories as well where we have seen good collaborations, and we're not a monolith by any means. So we do need to have different strategic approaches to being engaged with education, and just wanted to hear what are some of the success stories we've had with some of the groups and organizations in the community.
Well, I've worked with parents in some of my lower socioeconomic schools where kids were struggling. And I remember at the beginning of the school year, I'd put together a PowerPoint and, I'd make sure that it was basic. And I'd let parents know this is where our kids were last year. I would show them the scores in math and reading per grade level. And I would tell them, I'm setting a goal with the superintendent that we want to see 5 to 10% growth. I need your help with this. I need you to make sure that your kid is reading 30 minutes every day. I don't care if you got to keep a book in the car while you're driving. Let them read to you, because that is going to help to increase their literacy. It's going to help to increase the fluency. It's going to bring those scores up. You've got to let parents know as a team, we're in this together. We're going in. I'm giving you the baseline. You need to know where we are in order for you to get us where we're going. And so they know. And then when it's time for back to school night, we talk about it. Okay, what are you finding to be challenges at home? How can the school support you to help your kid to learn? Oh, Miss Murray, my child is really suffering in math, and I just can't do the math. And I'm like, yeah, the math is hard, but I'm going to tell you, we've got tutoring. I can talk to some teachers that if you can't get them there in the afternoon after school, then maybe you can bring them 30 minutes early before school starts, and I can get that teacher time carded to come in and work with your child 30 minutes before school every day. So it's all about communicating with parents to see where they are and how you can support them. And I noticed that, when the partnership is there, everything starts to flow. And that particular year, our test scores went up. We had huge success. And parents, once you build a relationship with them and they begin to trust you and see that you have their kids' best interests at heart, they're willing to go through the fire with you, to work with you to get the job done. And so the next quarter came and the scores came out. And I would send a robocall out to the parents and send notices home. I need you to come to the meeting so we could look at the scores and see what kind of growth we made or where we fell short. Oh my God, the gym was packed. I had my PowerPoint ready. I put the scores up from the beginning of the school and those from the first quarter. Oh my God, we made growth. Thank you, parents. We got this. We got this. We ain't got to our 5 to 10%, but we going to get there by the end of the year. You keep doing what you're doing and let me know how I can support you. Oh, thank you, Miss Murray. I've been bringing my kids to tutoring in the morning. It's really been helping because I don't know how to do that homework, but that teacher has been helping them with the homework, and it's a partnership. Is there a problem? Any problems your kids having in class with the teacher? If you can't get what you need from the teacher, you can come to my office. And guess what? They were there. They were there. Every time a teacher mistreated a kid, the parent came directly to me. And you know what I told them? I'll take care of it. And I took care of it. And it was a beautiful relationship.
Yeah. I often come from the parent perspective, and now I'm actually navigating the school district with grandchildren. And the same school, Edison, before it was a charter, it was named Edison Elementary. And one of the things they did, first of all, the horrible thing is, this was in the 90s, San Francisco, every 3 years would fire everybody at the school if the school wasn't good. And then you'd have to build up the school, and then they'd fire everybody again. So my children went to a school like that. It was so bad. The principal wrote a story called The Principal Story about his own horrible school. But anyway, one year we had 4 principals, and one was Diana Otero, and she actually stayed a whole year the next year. And one thing she would do, the school was in the mission, 40+% Black, 40+% Latinx. She would have meetings in the Bayview. She didn't care if it was just me or one other parent. Sometimes it was just me and one other parent. That lady had monthly meetings where we lived. Because when I first moved here, I didn't have a car. And it took 3 buses to get over here. I didn't know about walking back then. I didn't know the area. It took me 3 buses to get, it was on 22nd and Dolores, from Bayview to 22nd and Dolores. But when she became principal, she brought the meetings to us. So that was one thing that I found very good, that if you're, because in San Francisco, I don't know if it's still the same way, because our demographics had changed, but it used to be the Black kids were the most bused, like 94124 and 94134 were the most bused. So our babies were all over the place. And some families had children in multiple schools. So imagine if you went to the neighborhood where they lived and supported whatever you wanted as far as communication. That makes it easier. Another thing, I know we're talking about advocacy, but I'm going to put it out there. I know John was fussing about this. And it's not even incentives, but I mean food. You want me to come to a meeting at 6 o'clock? I need some child watch. I need some food. Make it to where I want to come. Now, I'm the person that come with or without an invitation. I'm at your door. I was told by another principal at Edison, why are you here? Why are you always here? It was a Monday at 9. And I told her, if you're so frustrated, and I did what Miss Annette said, I called her boss and his boss, and we need a meeting because she's ranting and raving at 9 o'clock on a Monday. So that's not a good look for that principal. But anyway, yeah. So I've worked for a lot of nonprofits that really worked with the whole child. So when some children go to school, they just want to deal with just the reading. You can't deal with just reading. And some children need extra help reading. Pull them out, do what you have to do, have them draw, be flexible until they get it. Have somebody support them babies. And it costs more money on the other end to house them in juvenile detention than it does to hire somebody to teach them to read. So, and we
And you
do
have to
have to
meet people where they
demand,
are. Yeah.
meet them where they are. And we have to demand also, back to our rights, when you get that little book, you hold it up. And that's even at the school board. I used to go to the school board in the 90s, and I was a student activist at City College. And one thing I learned is you have a manila folder, it could be blank papers in there, and you wave it around, and they'll say, oh, she got some letters and information. So we have to write, we have to advocate. And for those parents, or even children that don't have parents, there's somebody that could sign a petition. So instead of just you representing 50 people, they got to listen to you. One of the books I read was called Beyond the Bake. So I read a lot. And that book mentioned that, like, you can make more money, more inroads, more whatever when you have more people behind you. Because if I complain at the school, that's one person. Me and my friend go up there, that's 2 people. Me, my friend, and 50 letters, oh, they listening. So we can organize,
Oh,
but we
yes.
meet people where they
Oh, yes.
at and do it in their language. That's nothing. I go between the Ebonics and very high educated words. I'm crazy like that. And I do it in one sentence. So um, if the letter that person write has D-A-T instead of T-H-A-T, hey, that's what they meant. They meant that. And that letter's going to go in that pile also.
Oh, well, ladies, first of all, I do want to again thank y'all for taking the time this evening to come out and have this conversation. And as we begin to wrap up, I do want to give y'all an opportunity. Is there anybody that's noteworthy that you want to make sure you get an opportunity to shout out, celebrate, or just give an accolade for, or a word of wisdom for parents when it comes to being advocates from this conversation tonight? And I, Miss Murray, we'll let you start with the wrap up.
I would just like to give a shout out to all the parents that are working hard and that are showing up for their children, that are advocating for their children. that are taking it to the next level, because, you know, we talk about what's not being done, but we got some parents out there that are working hard, that are making sure that it's happening for their children. And I want to encourage, you know, all parents to make sure that you are staying abreast on what's going on with your children at school, that you're staying in contact with the teacher, that you're looking into what resources are available to you, that you're not just accepting whatever is being told to you, that you're seeking out another way to get your child what they need. Because there's a lot of different avenues. And so you have to educate yourself. Go online, look at your school report card, look and see how the school is doing, and then ask, what are my options? If this school is failing, a lot of the kids aren't performing because the test scores are so low, then start having a conversation with the district, letting the district know, I want my kid in a better school. I want my kid in a school that's high performing, because you have the right to ask for that. You don't have to let your kids stay in a low performing school for the whole time that they're in elementary or junior high, because by the time they get to high school, they're going to be so far behind that they're not going to be able to keep up with the curriculum. But unless you educate yourself by going online and looking at that school report card, you're not going to know what your kid is working in the midst of. And we need to know that in order for us to be better informed, make better choices, better decisions for our kids.
So my shout out is to the parents, but also to the community-based leaders who don't have to even talk to my kids, but they do. But I'm so glad I get to have a counterpoint with Miss Annette. I finally got one for you. So I took my daughter to Louisiana to college, to LSU last week. This week, I back Monday. And on the plane, I was listening to Nicole Hannah Jones. She says she have her baby, who's one of my heroes, wrote 1619 Projects. She has her baby in a low performing school, and it's not to sacrifice her baby, but it's to pull that school up. Because when everybody who has the wherewithal to leave leaves, who we got left? We leaving our people behind. So yes, I have a counterpoint. We got to make sure all the schools are higher performing. Like at our city, it was about, let's go get our babies in Lowell. Let's fight to get our babies in Lowell. And then Lowell's like, we don't want y'all little black babies here. So they went on and took them. We have all our drama for the last 40 years at Lowell with black kids. Last year, Mission High School, who accepts all our black babies, sent more babies to college, more black babies than Lowell did. I think more babies, period. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact stat, but I just know it's not always in the best interest of our people collectively to up and run. Like when the black middle class left the inner city, what was left? They're not gonna fix the garbage and all that stuff for lower socioeconomic folks. But if you working for the city and you still live in the city, they gonna take more heed. So yeah, I'm gonna stand firm on everybody can't leave. Everybody shouldn't leave. Everybody with the wherewithal shouldn't leave. Because then we're gonna be stuck like we are.
And I'm not,
No, I just love
I'm not saying
counterpoints on both sides of
everybody,
the
you know,
conversation.
yeah, and I want to counter you, because I just want to say that, you know, what works for some is not going to work for all. Because I've been in the
Definitely.
field of education for almost 30 years, and I know how the system works. If I was a parent and I could go back to my kids' elementary, I would have really been paying attention to that, and I would have given my kids the very best choices, you know, because every kid can't deal with that, just staying in a situation like that. Like you said, your gate kids, if that school is not high performing, you holding your gate kids back if they can't get that extra that they need. Or if you have a sensitive kid who struggles emotionally and they're in a school where it's always fights and ain't nobody learning nothing, you're sacrificing that kid. So it just depends on what personality that kid has and how they learn. And you have to make the choice, because we can't always use our kids to be the martyrs. We can't say that our kids are going to be the ones that always going to save. You know, sometimes we got to do what's best for our kids to make sure that they're successful. So that's a choice that parents have to make. I'm just throwing the option out there to let you know that that's available to you. If you're frustrated and you don't like that your kid is sitting in an unperforming school, you don't have to accept that. you have the right to ask for a transfer.
No, I agree with you. And it was my last child that I got out. All the rest of them was right here on our block. But guess what? One's an electrician with her own business. Two of them are plumbers, and one of them is a pipe sprinkler fitter. And then the baby girl's in college. And they went
Okay.
to low performing inner city school. So they still went well, but then they had the advantage of a mom that had a college education and don't quit. I don't let you mistreat my babies. I know other
And
baby on the
that's the
block when
key.
I'm there.
That's the
Yeah.
that's
You
the
all, I
key.
am gonna sign
Everybody's not
off.
gonna have that.
Yeah. I want to sign off because I had a granddaughter born yesterday, Lamaya Mari. So I'm in the hospital. I walked in at 1 minute to 4. So I'm gonna go back upstairs to this baby because I haven't
You
seen her
go,
yesterday. I
you
saw her
go right
yesterday.
ahead. You go
Yeah.
right ahead.
So and
Thank you
thank
for
you.
your time,
You too. And
and
thank you, Miss Murray.
congratulations on the new grandbaby.
Thank you. Because we going to the state.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Bye bye, you all.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Oh, so sweet.
I love our community, and again, I'm so glad we're able to get different points of view and different perspectives, because again, these are all part of adding to our collective push towards solutions for our children. And again, Miss Murray, we just want to make sure we take this opportunity to say thank you on behalf of the Bishop John Henry and our entire both sides of the conversation staff. But you are an absolute asset to your community. So please don't stop advocating, educating, and getting the message out about what's available so we can help our parents be better advocates for our children.
Okay. Thank you so much. Take care.
You have
Thank
a wonderful
you. Have a
night.
good evening.
Wow. Well, Charisma, what you take from this conversation? What you got?
What I took from it is that representation is important, and also we need to make sure we're talking to our kids every day so that our kids could let us know what's going on in their classroom. And so I definitely will continue to do that. And yeah, I just look forward to being there and seeing my daughter grow up and send her to school. So this definitely was helpful to me. So that's a great conversation.
Oh God, it is. And like I said, I just had a conversation a little earlier. My baby girl, my daughter is starting her freshman year in college, and so she's a couple hours away, and she's called when I called to check on her today. She's actually not feeling good. So Cam, you get a chance to see this. Daddy's praying that you feel better soon. I know you know how to take care of yourself, but as a parent, again, I think we're all kind of touched by this conversation, and I don't want to lose the reality of it's layered. Because again, as parents, we have our point of view. We know we want the best for our children. We expect that when we're told to send our children to school, that they will be safe and that they will be educated and they will be given every opportunity and resource available. And sometimes we just feel like or see that need is not getting met in a satisfactory way. And then you have the administrators, you have the policymakers, you have people who are tasked with an agenda of trying to manage budgets and resources to cover the needs of their community and their constituents. And then you have the frontline people, you have the teachers. And again, I know people personally who work in education who are on the front lines, and they're caught in the middle because they have to teach the children, but then they also have to perform to the expectations of their higher ups. And then they also are accountable to the community and to the parents. And sometimes they feel like they're overwhelmed. So I just want to give a message and a word of encouragement to everybody. We all can agree that our children are the future. They're the most important resource that we have. And whatever the issue is, whatever the challenges we face, we're going to do our children a much greater good if we can collaborate and work harmoniously on all levels. And it's really going to take local solutions to deal with this. Again, I know we have national and statewide issues wherever we go, but when it comes down to it, make sure you're involved, and aware of who your local officials are, who your local representatives are, and you as a community are building strategic relationships with the teachers and actually being invested and involved in your child's education, because that's the only way that these needs are going to truly get addressed on a consistent basis. But with that community, behalf of the bishop and everybody here, both sides of the conversation, we want to say thank you for joining us once again for a Sunday conversation. With that, we will bid you a good night. God bless.